Today, the federal government recognizes 562 Indian tribes. Each has its own language, history, and culture. Most have reservation lands that were established for them by the federal government when they were moved from their ancestral homes. Some reservations are vast. The Navajo Reservation is the size of Ireland. Others are tiny villages or pueblos. But regardless of their land base or population, each tribe is a true government within a government, a partner in a complex dance that is unique in all the world.
In our Constitution, tribes are recognized as sovereign governments just as the government of France or Great Britain or other countries. And so it stands to reason that if the United States in its history made a treaty with a tribe, they should have stuck by them just as they do if they make a treaty with France or Germany or Great Britain.
The relationship between the United States as a national government and Indian tribes is a form of sovereign to sovereign relationship. You know, in the United States we have a complicated form of sovereignty. It's not like, you know, in the old days when there was a king or there was an absolute leader and that was the sovereign and everybody else, you know, was under the sovereignty of that leader. In the United States we have sort of a divided form of sovereignty. So we have the national government, we have state governments, and each has certain incidents of sovereignty. There are certain respects in which, under the Constitution, individuals have, you know, rights of self-determination and rights of governance. Indian tribes, in a very special way that probably is unique in the world, have rights of sovereignty that precede the founding of the United States, predate the founding of the United States, that was recognized by European colonists, recognized by colonies, and recognized by the founders of the country, both under the Articles of Confederation and particularly under the Constitution.
Sovereignty, it was and is the essence of tribal governance. Tribes have to have the ability to make decisions affecting their people. That sovereignty was a guarantee in the treaties, but the sovereignty is less meaningful if it doesn't mean economic freedom. Because dependence upon others, especially upon government, means that you forego so much of the economic freedom that is understood to be part of the definition of sovereignty.
I would think that it's a very positive development to try and make people aware, both Indian and non-Indian people, that about the concept of tribal sovereignty, even if the concept itself is a terribly complicated one. And, you know, our system of government, all our systems of government depend upon having a populace that's as educated as possible about how government is structured and how you can participate and why it's important that you participate. And that's as true at the tribal level as it is at the national level.
Indian tribes in this country have a sovereignty, a real sovereignty. It's a retained sovereignty. It's not something given to them by the United States. They had it before the European settlers ever arrived here. And our Constitution recognizes that. Article 1, Section 8 says the Congress shall have power to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states and with the Indian tribes. That tells the three sovereignties that this Constitution recognizes. Now that does not grant you the sovereignty, it recognizes it. It doesn't grant France its sovereignty, it recognizes the sovereignty of the countries and the states. So it's a real sovereignty, and that's very, very important. And John Marshall has stated very, very clearly in his statement, he said the Indian nations had always been considered as distinct, independent political communities. John Marshall, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. We've applied the words treaty and nation to Indians as we've applied them to the other nations of the earth. They are applied to all in the same sense. You have a real sovereignty. One time I was talking to another member of Congress and showed that to him. He didn't believe in sovereignty, and he looked at that and he said, gee, I never realized that. They do have real sovereignty. And then he said, I still don't like it. I said, well, you probably don't like the income tax amendment either, but you better pay your taxes, right?
Indian tribes are sovereigns. Now, it doesn't mean that they are absolute sovereigns and no other government can tell them what to do. They're what's known under the Constitution as domestic dependent sovereigns. That is, they're fully encompassed by and they are citizens of the United States and of the states in which Indian peoples reside. But they retain certain incidents of a true sovereign, that is, in terms of self-governance and self-determination. And how these sort of competing sovereignties has developed since the United States was settled, North America was settled by European colonists, and then came to be governed by an independent country is a fascinating and unbelievably complex story.
The recognition of our sovereignty is built into the United States Constitution and recognized that we have a retained right. And this is something that we're very proud of.
I mean, in our country, and it's just as true in Indian country as it is anywhere else, the real sovereigns are the people. That's why the Constitution starts with the words, "we the people." All the government institutions and all the people who are elected or chosen to serve in them are people who are representing the people and are supposed to represent the people. And the way that those institutions and individuals go wrong is when the true sovereigns, when the people who have elected them or chosen them to be their representatives aren't paying attention and aren't asking questions and aren't, provoking them and making clear what it is that they think ought to be done.